This is JCT TV. This is Bible study for the 21st century. So friends, welcome. Today we're going to continue, as we have the last two programs, giving you a little insight into the work that we're doing overseas in Africa and India called WOW, Working for Orphans and Widows. My wife Kathy and I founded it 20 years ago. We've been at it ever since, faithfully. We're dealing with thousands of orphans and widows and have done so with great gratitude to the Lord for people like you who support it. Rita Guild is joining me. She's part of our staff, does a tremendous job for us. And with her, we'll be looking at some pictures of our recent trip to Africa.
JCT TV is the official voice of WOW, Working for Orphans and Widows. Jim Cantelon is the founder of WOW and has been ministering to orphans and widows in distress for 18 years. WOW's focus is home-based care for the dying. The horizon is vast, with thousands of the least of these in Africa and India. WOW depends on your generous support. To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
In a moment, you'll meet Rita Guild again. If you've been watching the program the last few weeks, you've already met Rita, but if you're seeing the program for the first time, I'll give you a little insight into Rita's involvement with us in a moment. But I just wanted you to know, friends, that for the last two programs, today and next week's program, I'm focusing in the early part of the show on Working for Orphans and Widows, WOW, as we call it, this ministry that my wife and I planted 20 years ago to care for orphans and widows in sub-Saharan Africa who had been impacted and are impacted by HIV and AIDS and other life-threatening diseases. And we've also expanded now into India. It's a humble ministry. It's not huge. I call it a boutique ministry. And we're dealing with several thousands of people, mind you. But it's something that I think has been born in the heart of the Lord. And so many people over the years faithfully have helped make this ministry happen. And I'm hoping you will too. This is why I'm exposing you to it. And also to help you understand when I refer to JCT television as the official voice of WOW, you understand what I'm talking about. Rita Guild has been working with us for 14 years. She's been a faithful soldier and has been involved in pretty much every aspect of our work. Spent a number of years doing monitoring and evaluation on the field with our various champions on the ground in sub-Saharan Africa. And her new role is Director of Operations, and Kathy and I are now doing the monitoring evaluation along with the other things that I do as a speaker and as a pastor. But Rita has come along to provide some color commentary to some very interesting pictures. Rita, we have focused like a laser this last little while on home-based care. I know why home-based care is important. You tell me why it's important.
I have seen the difference that home-based care has made in the home, in a family's life, not just the patient's lives, but the entire family. But we often call it the ministry of presence.
Yeah.
And there are times when there simply isn't food for the home-based care workers to take with them to go visit patients, but simply by being there, and the patient's eyes light up when the worker comes in. They know the worker. They are now friends with this volunteer. And they know that somebody hears them and sees them, and they're not forgotten. And that makes all the difference.
Now, when we talk about home-based care, it's easy for us to project from our experience of home. Their experience of home is totally different from ours. Number one, they probably are on a dirt floor. Mm-hmm. They maybe have mud walls. They've got grass roofs. Some of them have cement block buildings, but they're so basic. And a home-based care worker not only visits them, but they clean bedclothes. They clean and anoint bed sores. They deal with the product of dysentery and throwing up and other kinds of bodily discharges. They clean the area around the little rondavel, as it's called, and then they're also providing some rudimentary medicines. They're stroking their head, comforting them, praying with them. Home-based care is huge. It's huge.
It is. Our volunteers are trained in primary health care.
Yeah.
They're trained minorly in emotional care, but they're really trained to be a friend with a little bit of medical background that we give them. And they make a difference in being able to bring to identify what a patient's needs are, and then if there's an emergency, make sure that they get where they need to go.
And these home-based care volunteers are all local church-based. They're all from local churches. And what I find fascinating is that many of them, not all of them, but many of them are widows themselves and have little food security in their own homes. And here they are walking 3, 4, 5 hours a day to visit other widows and their orphan children in distress. And they themselves, without saying it, have a certain distress factor.
A lot of our home-based care workers were patients themselves.
Yeah.
And they were just so thankful for the difference that it made in their lives. Some of them, it saved their lives.
Yeah.
And they were given a reason not to give up, and there was a hope. And so they're giving back, and they're driven.
Now, a few weeks ago in Alongwe, Malawi, actually outside of Alongwe, Malawi, and you have to help me with pronunciation. Nsaliza. Thank you. We met with about 200 volunteers from one of our ministries there. Take a look at this pic, friends. Now, what's going on here? These are volunteers, all right? What do they got in those green bags? We have committed to supplying them with rudimentary food security once a month. And this is like Christmas for them. What's in those bags? There's cooking oil, there's maize meal, there's several bars of soap, there's a few other rudimentary household items. And this to them is all the difference between a life of the stress with no food security to a life where they have food for themselves and their children. And this enables them, of course, then to go out and minister to orphans and widows who have none of these things. But these volunteers are really the backbone of WOW. I wish you could hear them sing.
It's hard to see, and it's hard to tell from just a picture, but I've been there so many times that I can actually feel what's happening in that picture. And the joy and the singing is so loud. I'm sure your ears were ringing right
absolutely.
then.
Yeah. And they put the bags down and stand up and start dancing. And, I've experienced a lot of what's called praise and worship in churches in North America. This is praise and worship like you've never quite heard before. I mean, it's just phenomenal. God bless these volunteers. And as you say, like, for instance, now, you see the 3 women in the front, all in blue shirts. The one on the left, I forget her name, but she was almost dead 2 years ago.
Oh, Dorothy.
Dorothy, that's good for you, Dorothy.
Yeah.
And our home-based care workers started working with her, led her to the Lord. The Lord has done a great work in her life. She's back totally healthy with antiretrovirals and also another trace mineral that we provide them. And now she's a key volunteer working with several stricken widows for whom she is an angel. I mean, it's just amazing. Let's look at the next pic. Okay, what they're doing here is they've reached into their bags and they pulled out their bottle of cooking oil. They are so happy to have this cooking oil. You see it on their faces. But, it's cooking oil. I mean, how basic is that? We wouldn't give it a second thought.
No,
Rita.
no.
But for them, it makes all the difference because now they can fry a few things.
It's a gift of saying that we recognize you and we appreciate the work that you're doing.
Yeah. And of course, they start singing, and they're not praising Wow. They're not praising Jim and Rita or Kathy. They're praising Jesus, which is the way it should be. Now, there's Kathy, my wife. How can you tell it's Kathy? She's the only blonde in the crowd, but she's hugging one of the volunteers. And I mean, this is the real deal. This is not some, sort of stiff-armed North American hug. This is a full hug and total joy on both faces. The volunteer is just as happy as Kathy is. Is there another one here? I think there's another one, volunteer that is being embraced by Kath and Kath embracing her. Joy is palpable. And when you're with a group of volunteers like this who are just loving Jesus and loving each other and loving life because of his provision, it's hard for us not to get engaged. A part of that group, by the way, were some men. And along with them, about 35 young adults who are volunteers in training. You can't see his face, you can just see his back. But this is one young man who I felt and feel has real ministry potential. And so I asked him just to come and talk to me after one of the sessions. And he's a very humble guy, but he's got this beautiful, beautiful singing voice. And he was the one leading in a lot of the praise and worship songs. And he's got a voice like an angel, but he also has a heart for God. He's 20 years old. And I said to him, you know what, young man, I think the Lord may have his hand on you for ministry. And I want you to think about it. And he was very interested to hear that from me. So I laid my hand on his shoulder, as you can see, and I prayed for him. I believe these are like divine appointments, There's only one of us, there's only one Rita, there's one Jim, there's one Kathy, but there are thousands of them. And if they can begin to minister together, it can make all the difference. Rita, when you were first involved there, it must have been very difficult the first time you went on a home-based care visit. Did it get any easier as time went on, or is it always difficult?
It's always difficult.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any easier,
Right.
except that you may know a bit better how to comfort somebody when at first you're not, the words don't come to you nearly as easy because you're in shock. Yeah. But what doesn't get easier is that at some point you have to get up, turn your back, and walk out that door.
Yeah. Did you feel guilty doing that? Ever?
I felt, I felt hopeless. I remember one time thinking, what are we doing here? How can we help these people? Yeah. But then I've seen it over the years, and it's one by one. Yeah. And we're led to the right people at the right time.
I think most of us heard the story of the starfish that had been cast up on the shore somewhere along the eastern seaboard of the U.S. And there were 200 or 300 starfish there, all dying. And this older man was out for his morning walk, and he saw this boy who was throwing them back into the water. And this, crusty old guy thought this was very nice of the boy, but he said, son, there's hundreds of them here. What difference is this going to make? He said, I don't know about them, sir, but it's going to make a difference to this one. And, that's the approach you got to take. Mm-hmm. It's going to make a difference to this one. Mm-hmm. And one by one, some of the volunteers, as you say, were patients themselves. And some of the young leaders were orphans when we first started our ministry. Mm-hmm. And they've been brought up through the various partner champions we have on the ground. They've come to faith, they've been trained, and they are not only preparing for teaching, lawyering, nursing, pastoring, but they've also learned how to do volunteer work. And their whole worldview now involves the care of orphans and widows.
They've seen compassion illustrated. They've been recipients of compassion. They have, as you've said before, they're very intelligent people, the same as you and I, but they haven't had the chances that we've had. And a lot of the orphans that we've intervened with have been given opportunities that not everybody has, and they're using it.
Absolutely. I mean, the gratitude goes on and on. We'll be back with more right after this.
Jim Cantelon Today is a program dedicated to the teaching of the good news of Jesus Christ. This all through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. JCT also brings to you encouraging testimonies and stories from Christian leaders all over the globe. If this program has added value to your life, would you please consider becoming a partner? To do so, simply contact us by phone, mail, or online.
So in Mark chapter 1, we were looking at this last week, and we'll just continue. Jesus in the synagogue, his ministry has just begun, and a man with an unclean spirit is in the service, and he shouts out saying, "Let us alone, what have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." Just a point here. You'll notice the plural pronouns here. Let us alone, what have we to do with you? Did you come to destroy us? Either, and this was the case in other situations where Jesus dealt with those who were demon-possessed, there were more than one evil spirit resident within the person, or this spirit that happens to be in this man in the synagogue occasion is speaking on behalf of all evil spirits. Matthew doesn't tell, or Mark doesn't tell us, we don't know, but it's interesting that those plural pronouns are there. Okay, Jesus doesn't put up with this guy. He just rebukes him, and he says, "Be quiet, come out of him." And of course, when Jesus commands an evil spirit to come out of a person, he has no choice. He tries to throw a little bit of a fuss, convulsing the man and crying out with a bit of a scream, but he came out. The people are watching this. Now, this is not your typical synagogue service, right? By no means. And Mark tells us in verse 27, they were all amazed. So they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And immediately his fame spread through all the region around Galilee. Now, here's that word authority again. He taught with authority, and now they're saying with authority he commands even unclean spirits, and they obey him. Jesus wasn't saying, "Would you please, pretty please, come out of him?" He was just commanding him to come out. Just like a commanding soldier, a commanding officer commands soldiers to do this and do that, and they have to do it. These unclean spirits obviously were desperately afraid of Jesus. Jesus had the power to destroy them. And when he tells them to come out, they come out, okay? Well, the people are seeing this, and they see this with wonder. They're amazed. Some of them probably just frightened as all get out, because they'd never seen anything like this before. They'd seen people who were demon-possessed before, people who were being controlled by evil spirits. They'd never seen someone who could control the evil spirit and actually command them to flee. And he did it with such authority, he did it with such ease. So this authority thing springs up again and again. It was authoritative, Jesus was in his teaching, authoritative in his healing, authoritative in his delivering people of demonic oppression. Where'd that authority come from? Well, people who had a brain put two and two together. This is not your common prophet here. This is someone who has the mark of heaven on him. Maybe he is who he says he is. And as time went on, of course, Jesus told the disciples initially, that inner group of 12, and then others would hear it, who he was. He who has seen me has seen the Father. I and the Father are one. You've read those passages. But this was just the beginning of his ministry, and already his fame is spreading, okay? His fame spread throughout all the region around Galilee. They had never seen anything like him, okay? So, they finished the synagogue service. They come out of the synagogue, verse 29. As soon as they had come out of the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now, when it says, as soon as they'd come out of the synagogue, they entered the house, Mark's not kidding. I haven't counted the steps, but from the synagogue to the house of Peter and Andrew, which I have walked how many times over the years, living in Israel for 7 years, then doing so much television there. It's maybe 15 paces, if that. So you come out of the synagogue and you're almost in the backyard of Peter and Andrew's house. That's how close it was. So they enter the house of Simon and Andrew, and James and John are with them. But Simon's mother lay sick with a fever, and they told him about her at once. So he came and took her by the hand, lifted her up, and immediately the fever left her, and she served them. Fevers were not uncommon in that part of the Galilee, because the Hula Valley, which is just north of Capernaum, Capernaum is at the lake, and you got to ascend up immediately north of Capernaum is what's now known as the Mount of Beatitudes. It has 8 switchbacks on the highway, which I have driven many, many times in my little Volkswagen. It's about 450 feet elevation. And then that is the beginning of the Upper Galilee, and you just keep climbing all the way up to Mount Hermon. It's just a constant climb. It really is the heights. But up there is a kind of a plain, even while the climb continues. And that's where the Hula Valley is, and that's where the Hula Lake was in Jesus' time. And it was subtropical. Certainly the Sea of Galilee was subtropical, but much of that tropical climate was there. And it was a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And when you read about fevers in that part of the Galilee, it's invariably it's malaria. So here she was, very, very ill, and Jesus just simply heals her. He's just delivered a guy in the synagogue from demonic oppression. Now he heals this woman. And remember, it's now the Sabbath. So she gets up. She's probably prepared the meal already previous to the Sabbath. That's what you do in the Orthodox Jewish world, because you must not work once the sun sets on Friday night. And by now the sun would have set. The Sea of Galilee would be in shadows. It wouldn't have been entirely dark yet. Probably maybe 6 o'clock at night. So it's starting to get dark. She gets up and serves this meal. And afterwards, after the sun is already set, but people are still awake, still up, the entire city brings its sick. We read that. At evening, when the sun had set, they brought to him all who were sick and those who were demon-possessed. I mean, the word's already out there about the demon-possessed factor. And the word is already getting out about Peter's mother-in-law. I mean, they didn't have the internet in those days, but word of mouth spread quickly. And so Mark tells us the whole city was gathered together at the door. Okay. Verse 34, then he healed many who were sick with various diseases, cast out many demons, did not allow the demons to speak because they knew him. I find that fascinating. He didn't let the demons to speak because they knew him. Jesus had already been proclaimed the Holy One of God, the Son of God, by God himself at his baptism by John in the Jordan River, okay? So Jesus is quite happy and quite content for the voice of heaven to declare who he is, but he does not want the hounds of hell. He doesn't want the hoarse cries of hell as an advertisement, okay? So even as he's casting these demons out of these people, he's ordering the demons to keep their mouths shut. None of this, we know who you are, the Holy One of God. Just keep it to yourselves. Go away. I want nothing to do with you. Okay? I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, he heals a lot of people. And in a sense, it's dusk. The sun is set. It's Capernaum. It's the beginning of his ministry. Not all of his disciples have been selected yet. Jesus is just sort of in the, the nascent phase of his 3 years of ministry. And somehow there in Capernaum, with his healing of the sick and his delivering of the demon-possessed, you see a microcosm of the ministry that was about to unfold. And we're going to see that Jesus almost immediately begins to go out to the villages of the Upper Galilee, the Galilee of the Gentiles, to begin to declare, the truth about the kingdom of heaven. And don't forget, friends, I mentioned it a couple programs ago, I'll mention it again. When Jesus taught, the thing that gripped the people was he was teaching them about the kingdom of heaven. And they all were interested in this because for the last 400, 500 years, it's called the intertestamental period, after the last prophets had spoken and written what they had written, you went through this period of silence. And 400 or 500 years is a long, long time. During that period of time, there was this kind of simmering, back burner, it won't go away, smoking flax, bruised reed, expectation that the story is not finished. The kingdom of heaven is going to be revealed. The Messiah is going to be at the door. God is going to reverse our fortunes as a people. He's going to rout our Roman oppressors. He's going to establish the kingdom. And so when Jesus talks about the kingdom, it really touched a nerve.
The Bible tells us that true religion is visiting orphans and widows in their distress. The Bible also says that God is a father to the fatherless and a defender of widows. Heaven's core values for mankind begin with God's heart for the least of these. When you support WOW, you're in the sweet spot of God's heart for the poor. Yes, we're only a small player in this great drama, but at least we're on the field. Please give generously.
This is a special program, as have the last two been special, in that I've been introducing you to WOW, Working for Orphans and Widows, the missions ministry that my wife and I planted 20 years ago, which continues to this day. And JCT, this program, is the official voice of WOW. We really want to encourage you, friends, to come on board and help support what we're doing. You're getting a little insight there with Rita Guild as my guest, who works with us, and also these pics from the last trip Kathy and I just finished in Africa. This is your basic ministry. The proclamation of the gospel and the demonstration of God's heart for the broken. The weakest link, orphans and widows, those who are dying. The old hymn says, rescue the perishing, care for the dying, snatch them in pity from sin and the grave. Friends, we are a rescue ministry, and we need your help in the rescue. The coordinates are always there in this show. Copy them, get in touch with us, support us. Thanks.